Welcome to the show. It's on a Monday. Very special day. We got some very special guests in the house today. I'm excited. Under a minute, guys. Get ready to roll. You guys ready for a good day? A lot of cool stuff happening on the show today. You guys ready to get rolling? It's time to get number 910 underway. I see Rush is here. Privyet, как дела, мой брат? Slava Bogu. Here we go. Let's count it down. How you guys doing? Welcome into the show. Welcome David and Donna Delp to be with us today. David and Donna Delp. If I got it, I can't even speak. I can't even speak English. And today's number 910, 910 shows, and we're glad to have you guys in. Special friends. We're glad you're here with us on the show today. Let me just give you a little heads up. We're working toward our fundraiser, and you can see right now why we need a studio, because we're kind of like crammed in here. So
yeah, but it's good. We're having a good time so far.
We had a great talk. It's great to have you guys on. Hey, Catherine. Hey, Sherry. Hey, Trish. Vegas is here. Russia got in. Hey, Carol. Hey, what's up, Patty? How's it going? And Junior Stewart, South Carolina's here officially. Pauline's here. My mother-in-law, so I must behave. And then Lisa got in, too. It's good to have Dave and Donna Delp. Let me just go back, give a little history, and I'm going to shut up and get out of the way. Me and Dave go back a long, long way. We went to church together in Princeton, West Virginia. I guess school together. I guess some. I don't know. Did you go to Princeton Junior High School?
Yeah, I did. You were 1 year younger than I was, though, so we didn't see one another at school much.
But I still am 1 year younger than you. I just want to remind us of that.
Yeah, you are. You are. But we're still getting old.
No kidding. That's another conversation on another show on another day. Yeah. Hey, Joey, how's it going? There's a missionary, Joey Potter. How's it going, Joey? Cool. And Carolyn got in, and a bunch of folks jumping in. Today, we welcome our friends David and Donna Delp. They have an incredible story to tell. I don't know exactly what they're going to share with us, but tell us what's going on in your guys' life.
Well, we are, I think the word missionary is a good term.
Yeah, that's a new thing, right, for you? Anyway.
Yeah,
it's very new.
It is very new, but to us it kind of feels more like just doing what God called us to do and created us to do. We just happen to be planning on doing that in Africa for the next 10 years.
10 years.
Yeah, which is a new thing. And the 10 years kind of coincides with the calendar of our lives because we are getting a little bit older. But it's never too late to do what God calls you to do.
Amen. Amen. I can do some of the things I used to do. It just takes me longer to recover.
Yes.
That is so true.
Yeah, and I think this whole process of traveling and all that would be a little easier with a little less mileage on our bodies, but we are having a great time with it. So huge transition in our lives because we've been in Indianapolis area for the last 25 years, been in ministry for 30 years, pastored a couple of churches, and God brought us together about 5 years ago, which is another part of the story, but we've yielded to the call to develop leaders on the continent of Africa.
It sounds like fun. I've been to Africa a couple of times. I haven't been to South Africa. I've always wanted to go. And you guys are going to move to what area?
We're going to base in Durban, South Africa.
Durban.
Yeah.
Durban.
And the operative word is continent. We'll be traveling a lot of places on the continent.
Which is massive.
Yes, it's extremely massive. So we are excited about it. It seems like when God wants to do something in your life, he always does it in a big way, and this is definitely exceeding and abundantly above all that we were able to think, imagine.
I think we don't look at it that way. Though. When somebody says, God's going to do exceedingly abundantly, that's like more zeros on the check, we think, right? We have no idea he means continent. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So that's what we're off to.
And so what do you want to share with our folks today who are watching here and logging in there all over the nation, all over the world?
Yeah.
What do you want to share with us today about you? Because these people don't know who you are. Introduce yourself and what God's doing. I know missions is one thing. We got that covered. So
well, we need to start with our story.
Okay, that's awesome.
Because our story is what we anchor in. And, the great thing about a story is everybody has one.
I know. And yours is amazing, I have to say. We spent the last 30 minutes just talking some amazing stuff.
Yeah, so I'll start with my story, and then I'll let you tell your story. But I've spent the last 25 years in leadership in our fellowship network, been pouring into pastors. That was my favorite part of the job. There were a lot of other parts that I didn't like so well, but that was my favorite part of the job, is training pastors, working with pastors, just walking alongside them, especially the young pastors, to kind of, as I got older, to pour into them as a spiritual father, and a lot of mentoring, a lot of training, and a lot of ministry students that we were working with. Just thoroughly enjoyed that. But our story kind of kicks back that a little over 6 years ago, on a Saturday morning, I couldn't wake my wife up. Wow. And at the end of that day, my daughters and I stood in the hallway of a critical care unit. We disconnected life support, and Joyce went into the presence of Jesus. Wow. And of course, you knew us way back when we were teenagers, and we went to church together, part of the same church.
I never called her Joyce.
No, she had another name back then that people called her. But and you were one of my best buddies during that time. Sure. We had a great time together. But it was on that day 6 years ago that Joyce passed away, went in the presence of Jesus, and that sort of threw my life into a tailspin. And part of it was that I've always tried to be faithful to God, and always tried to go where he wanted me to go, and to do what he wanted us to do, and to be faithful stewards of what God had blessed us with. But the most important prayer that I'd ever prayed in my life didn't get answered that day. And it took me a little while to kind of process through that, and I learned the faithfulness of God in a deeper way. So that kind of shifted everything. And I met Donna about 5 years ago, and our journey began. But why don't you tell your story?
Okay. Well, I grew up in a pastor's home, so I'm a pastor's
I
kid.
didn't know that.
Yep,
PK.
yep. I am a PK.
That's trouble right
and
there.
so I say, well, yeah, there's that too. But I loved it. I loved being a part of it, and all I ever wanted to do was go into ministry. I had thought about wanting to be a missionary or whatever, but I married a man back in 1982, and we did go into ministry together, and we did a lot of stuff. We were missionaries in Brussels, Belgium, and we transitioned to the U.S. State Department Foreign Service, believe it or not, and it was a really incredible place to be. So we moved to Africa. So I lived in South Africa. I lived in Nigeria, and it was there that we got to experience some just really awesome things living on the continent. But it was in Nigeria that we decided to go to the beach one day because it was a little bit chaotic, and we wanted to get away from the chaos. It's a
relaxation.
Well, there's about 24 million people in Lagos, Nigeria. That's a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I love the people there, and even the culture and stuff. I loved what I got to experience there, but sometimes you just need a little break. And so we got away to the beach that day, and I like to experience things. I got to go barefoot in the beach. I got to step in the water. And so I did that day. I knew that it could be dangerous to swim in those waters. And I wasn't swimming at the time, but I got knocked off my feet, pulled into a series of riptides. Wow. My husband came to rescue me. He bought me a little bit of time. Thankfully, that day there were other people on the beach with us. There was a Marine who jumped into the water immediately, a sailor, and they came for me and they pulled me out first. It took a while, but they saved me. But they were not able to pull my husband out in time. And so my daughter was there that day, and we sat on the beach and we watched him die. I had to move back to the United States, and so my story is really one of being confused about what I believed, which is crazy. You know, after believing in God and believing in his faithfulness and believing that prayer worked, I was faced with wondering whether or not it did work.
But I think I mean, in your defense, I think that's a normal process many of us go through when we're hit with hard, difficult circumstances.
Because my question was to myself is, why should I pray if God's not going to do what I ask? And what I realized was the difference between me and other people who maybe don't have that faith that I had is that I had hope. And God reminded me of that. I have hope where other people don't have that. And I was acting like I had none. And God began to take me on a journey of getting my eyes off of stuff I didn't understand and getting my eyes on him. Mm-hmm. And when I did that, even though I still didn't completely understand, and to this day I can't say that I'm going to understand why things happened the way that they did, but I've learned to trust God again. Mm-hmm. Because I believe that he can do stuff in me and through me. If I can take my eyes off of stuff I don't understand and put my eyes on him, I believe that he can use me.
Amen. Yeah. Amen.
Yeah, and that has been part of the journey. It's really refined our walk with Christ. It's really deepened our understanding of who God is, and we've come to know him in a better way.
I can't imagine just how that overall affects your whole Christian experience. I mean, it's just like, because we hear these stories, these tragedies happen, and we're always over here, bless them, Lord, and we're praying for them. And then when it comes to visit your home and you go through those many afflictions, but the Lord delivers them out of them all, that's different when you're walking through it and how that changes you. Yeah,
and the most precious verse of Scripture, very simple one out of Psalm 23, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, he is with me.
And I always remind people, that that's the shadow of death. So you get through, you make it, but it's not necessarily easy. There's that pending doom that's over your head because of all the things you've gone through and what ultimate effect they can have on your life.
Yeah, so the presence of God being with us in a strong, powerful way. So really Christ was revealed to us in a much deeper way through this journey. Wow. And our faith and our trust was deepened in some pretty profound ways. And I would never want to go through that again. And most everybody's been through difficult things in their lives. And when we start to compare, what they went through is worse than what we went through, or the other way around, we can get messed up with that. But the reality is that we all have a story, and that God works in our lives through that story. We've kind of anchored in a verse of Scripture in Philippians chapter 1 and verse 12. And I could go into that deeply, but it was a process of God taking me out of the center. And as I'm talking about my story before Donna came into my life, of taking me out of the center and putting Jesus into the center. Mm-hmm. And Apostle Paul said that which has happened to me has really served to advance the gospel of Christ. Wow. And we came to realize that everything that's happening in our lives, really, God's going to gain glory out of that.
And I think that's probably a test, because I think a lot of times people are not interested in that.
No, I wasn't interested in it. I was kind of hacked off. I'm reading Philippians, and the Holy Spirit directed me to Philippians. I'm reading Philippians. I came to verse 12, and I thought, no. We're not going to make this about something good, because there's nothing good that can come from this. But then that's when God spoke to my heart. David, I've let you be in the center of this for a while so you could heal, but now we've got to put Jesus back in the center of your life.
And that's it's got to be a huge challenge.
Yeah.
I mean, it causes you to really, where are my values? Yeah. Have I lost my values through my difficulty? Have I lost my priorities? And that's not to be, discompassionate about our circumstances, but in the reality of it, how do I regain? I remember my wife and I went through some terrible times in ministry, and I didn't ever want to be in ministry again. And I said to my wife, these are the words I said, baby, I think I lost some things I needed. How can I be in ministry when I've lost these things I needed?
Wow, yeah.
And so, but the Lord restores. I mean, that's part of what he does, right?
Yeah. And hearing you say that, I felt that way, but when I'm weak, then I'm strong, because we're not operating in our own strength. We're learning to operate in the strength of God, in the strength of the Spirit. Amen. And as that starts to happen in our lives, it actually opens the door up for God to do even more incredible things in our lives than were possible before. Amen. That's been our experience.
impossible to see when you're in it, though, isn't it? I mean, it seems impossible.
It is.
We have to just fall on Him and trust Him. And we really just got to fall into His arms and say, God, because I think a lot of people in these processes, like you guys have been through, they turn their back and say, God, I'm done with you. I'm angry. And you might be angry. It's okay. You know, I tell people, say, you can't question God. I'm like, God's God's not intimidated by your questions.
Yeah, I did, and I was angry.
And He's not intimidated by your anger. He you know, Jesus was tempted in all ways as we are. He understands, right? I mean, so God's not up in heaven going, okay, I'm gonna hurt you bad for being mad at me. God's going like, I'm gonna get you through this.
Well, one of the most profound moments, it was 30 days after Joyce passed away. The reason I remember that is because I kept thinking about my wedding ring and thinking, and that's a personal decision for everyone, but I decided I'm kind of hard-headed, and I got to get this through my head that this is over. Wow. And so I think I need to take this ring off just so that I can get through my head this is over. So I decided I'll do it on day 30. So day 30 came, and I took it off, and I just broke, and I wept. Wow. And I went and got the Bible, and her Bible was laying there, so I got it, and I opened up. What's the verse in Jeremiah about I have a plan for you, purpose?
29:11.
There you go. And that's where it opened up because she had been to that passage a lot, trusted God in that, and anger just came over me, and I really got angry in that moment. It just kind of hit me. That was the moment when it really hit me. And I kind of went off for about 15 minutes, and I was yelling and shaking my fist around just by myself. And then I got a hold of myself, and I just began to weep. And I said, God, I am so sorry, Father. I am so sorry. And I'm telling you, Wayne, it was like God just raised His hand up and said, no, you don't need to apologize about this. I totally get it. But in the midst of that, it was almost like a tangible, the arms of God wrapping around me from behind and just holding me in that and calming me down. And I felt His presence in a way that I've never felt before.
That's so powerful.
And it's when we need God, the moment when we need God the most, that's when His presence becomes the strongest. And there are times when we don't feel His presence, when we really feel like we need His presence. But in that moment, I was kind of at the end of it. And so it's been that revelation of Christ to us that's been the most precious thing in this whole journey, just knowing Him in a greater way.
It's amazing because the last couple of weeks we've been talking about the Father heart of God, our approach to God, that when we come to God, how do we see Him? We see Him as this big ogre. We see Him as this king. Although He is a king, He chose the term Father. He chose the term adoption, which means I wrote down, I had a list here, provision and all these things that God does in our life, nurture and all those things. And it's so powerful to hear you say that even when you were angry and spouting off at God, He's like, all right, I got it. It's all right. I understand. I'll give you a minute here. You're going to get through this. That's what I want to tell folks out there. You're going to get through it. Here's the evidence that you can come back and you hate to say it, in a certain sense, but greater things. I mean, how do you grasp that? I mean,
Well, that was hard for me because I didn't really want to attach good things to the bad things, but God helped me to identify 3 decisions, and this was just like days after the loss, that I would be whole again no matter what it took. I made a commitment that I will be whole again.
Praise God.
The second commitment was I chose to believe that good things would happen that wouldn't have happened if this hadn't happened first. And that one was hard for me to swallow. But that's hope. That's hope in God to believe that we do have a future, that there is still life ahead. And the third thing was that I would help somebody else. And I didn't realize it at the time, but those 3 decisions were really health, hope, and purpose. Wow. That we need the purpose. And it's come down to guide our lives that this costs too much to waste. It just costs too much to waste.
That's a powerful principle. So explain what you just said. I think I know what you mean, but for listeners, it costs too much. What do you mean by that?
Well, the pain of this and going through the tough stuff, and one of the things that ministered to me was a quote from Timothy Keller, who said, the prayer I want God to answer, and this is profound, but the prayer I want God to answer is the prayer He knows I would have prayed if I knew everything that He knows. And as we've come into this, there was a greater prayer that both of us had prayed throughout our lives. I want to know Christ. And, Dave, Donna's husband, is fine. He's in heaven. Joyce is in heaven. They're fine.
Yeah,
they're fine.
They're
it's
doing
us that are
great.
left behind.
Way better than we are.
That's and I realized that this was part of the answer to that prayer, to know Christ. But it costs too much to waste in that if we let God, because it is a decision. If we will let God continue to work His will out in our lives. And look, I know how empty these words can be to people who are walking through pain right now.
Yeah.
It can be very abrasive and very grating because this was over a period of time. But we decided we've got to help people out of what we've learned. This costs too much to waste.
Yeah, that makes complete sense.
And so we're not going to allow it to be wasted.
Wow. We're about to wrap up here. Donnie, you have anything you want to share as we get ready to close?
You know, the result of what Paul said, he said, what has happened to me has really served to advance the gospel. And then he says, as a result, I had to choose what the result would be of the stuff that would happen to me. I could stay in my bitterness. I could stay in my anger. I could stay in my misunderstanding and not trust God. I had to choose what my result would be. And when I let go of the stuff I didn't understand and said, okay, God, I'm going to yield to you even though I don't like it, I don't understand it, but I'm going to believe you have a plan again, just as David said. Then the result becomes something that is more than I could think or imagine and hope for, because I did have hope. And I'm thankful for that. And I want the result to be something that lives are going to be changed. Things will happen that would have never happened. And we're going to make a difference on the continent of Africa. That's what I believe. That's what the result's going to be.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it's amazing that you know, and I think it gives, if you're listening today, it gives you hope to know that whatever you're going through, if you will allow God, He can do incredible things in your life in spite of, this is not your end, this is not your last moment, your last day. There's life ahead, and God's got great things planned for you. Not just that you'll live, because, I'm going to try to smile again. No, we're talking about accomplishing incredible things for God. Yeah. These people could be on the sidelines saying, forget ministry, forget, I'll go to heaven, but I quit. They could say that, and they'd have good reason. And most of us wouldn't say anything, you shouldn't do that. But they have valid reasoning for doing that.
Yeah, as do most of us.
Yeah, right, I agree.
And the cap is, just to make the connection, the whole Africa thing is, see, we developed a deeper sense of trust and faith in God, and that relationship's been so profound that He's given us the faith to do things that we probably wouldn't have had the courage to do before. Wow. But we've learned the reality in a new way. I mean, we've been walking with God for decades.
Right, I get that.
But we learned it in a new way that, we really can take the risk. We really can step out into some things that look scary to the natural, because we've learned that we can trust God in everything.
That's so powerful.
And so we're going to Africa because that's the direction of God on our life.
What are you thinking, God? What are you doing?
We should mention our podcast, David.
As I was going to say, so as we close today, how can people connect with you guys directly?
Well, our website is calibrate360.com, and we have a podcast called Calibrate Life.
Which is on Thursdays, right?
Yep, it's released on Thursdays, so those are fairly easy to find. And if you want to connect with us, most of it's found through calibrate360.com.
There you go. And you can have them at your church, because they're raising the funds to support them as they head to Africa. And, of course, they both have ministry experience. I mean, so much here. I wish we had much more time, but we don't. We're actually over time now, which is okay. I don't care.
We'll have to do a part 2 some other day.
There we go, and 3 and 4, so you guys have to come here now. Stay for an extended period of time. Come back and be on the show tomorrow. Well, guys, we love you. I missed so many comments. I'm going to go back and check it out. And so many great people in here, so many incredible things you guys are saying. I saw a few, but you guys are thebomb.com. I so appreciate you. Dave and Don, I appreciate you for being on the show.
Thanks for having us.
I was so excited to have you. When I found out you were coming, I was like, I got to get these guys on the show, man. They're awesome. And there's the credit music, so I'm going to roll. I can't fade off of them. They just have to sit here awkwardly, uncomfortably while we... Hey, the studio, I was going to get a total from Sean. We're up to about 10% of our goal, I believe. We're moving that direction. Appreciate you guys helping us out with that. And one day this will be a better setup when you show up. I promise it's going to be. Love you guys. Have a blessed day. We'll check you out tomorrow morning at 11:30 on the Vital Axiom. We are out.